Hi, Shaurya. Hello, Mr. Sneashish. Okay, perfect. So, we all know now what insect pollination is. There is specific mention of the insect pollination in the sweet peas plant. So now, just to mention it briefly, we already know what insect pollination is. So in this case, a bee is involved as an agent of pollination, and these sweet peas and garden peas, they are little different varieties of the peas itself, but then they are just little different in terms of, I guess, the sweet pea is little sweeter and the other one is not so sweeter. And also the other one has a different coloration and so on, but that differences we can leave aside. What we need to know here is the how the pollination happens in this sweet peas plant. The flowers of this plant, they are obviously going to be colorful and they contain nectar. Now because it has nectar, this bee has a kind of proboscis. I don't know if you are aware of proboscis, but proboscis is something like proboscis in the honeybees. Yeah, this is something which is like a sting at the start. Maybe this one. No, here it is not visible. This one. Yeah, this is the front portion of the honeybee, and yeah, here it is clearly visible as well. You can see this is the head portion, and this sting like thing is coming out of its mouth. That's what is called as proboscis. In structure, this is how it looks like. Yeah, it is like kind of extended uh, tubular structure which goes inside the flower, and then it will suck out the nectar. So you can see this, that is proboscis in honeybees. Now this proboscis, when it is inside the flower to suck the nectar, this will make the wings of that particular bee to push down the petals. And that way what happens is, like, again, this diagram is not exactly the same, but you can simply look at that the nectar is somewhere here, and when the honeybee puts the proboscis inside the flower to suck the nectar, the anthers, they will get attached either to the body or to the proboscis or to the wings and so on. It can be attached to the different part depending on what is the flower arrangement. In this case, the flower arrangement is specifically shown differently, where the anthers are separately attached at the tip of the flower. But let's say if the anthers are here where the pistil name is shown, right, that's when the proboscis will carry some of the anther along with the whole of the body part. And there is always a chance that these pollen grains, they will fall onto the stigma of the same flower, or they can also fall onto the stigma of the another flower. If it is another flower, that will be cross pollination, and if it is falling on the same flower due to just some movement of the bee, it will be obviously self pollination, right? So that is the simple part. So in short, in summary, what you have to know here is this uh, insect pollination happens in the sweet pea plant. There is something called as proboscis, which is sucking out the nectar from these flowers. And because of that action, the bee goes very close to the anther. The anthers will stick to the, or the pollen grains will stick to the proboscis and the other body parts of the bee. They will be carried to different flowers, and that way the pollination will happen. This is what is the summary of whatever is written on this slide. Yeah. I assume there are no questions there. If at all there are, please do ask. And the second example is of the wind pollination that is happening in the maize. Now, maize also has like the flowers, they have loosely connected filament. This was the characteristic when we were studying the wind population. The anthers, they have to be loosely connected so they can be easily blown away by the slightest of the wind. And then these pollen grain, they can easily fall on the feathery stigma coming out of the petal of another female flower. So just to show you briefly in a diagram here, what you see in this is the maize plant. On the top, that inflorescence is the male, which is called as tassel, but that you need not remember. This is the anther part. These are the style stigma ovary part. Whatever you get as a con is actually the fruit, or what we call as the female reproductive structure, which is growing into the fruit. Now, when these anthers will fall onto the stigma of another flower, of course, then it will be cross pollination due to the wind. That is what is being said here. Now, you need not remember all these names. What you need to know is this male uh, gamete is here, female gametes are here in the kind of the corn that is growing on the side, and that is how the cross pollination happens due to the wind as a pollinating agent in maize. So that is the second specific example that was given in the syllabus. Now, any quick questions? If not, then I will move on to the next one. Are there any questions, anyone? I suppose this was just the revision of the older top points. Okay, so now we will move on to the one of the most important phenomena from this chapter after pollination, that is fertilization. Now, in general, fertilization is the union or the fusion of the nuclei of the male gamete and female gamete. Now, male gamete is obviously the pollen grain in the flowering plants. You can see it here. And the ovule, which is the female gamete. Now, when we talk of fusion of the nuclei, that means the cells, the pollen grain as a cell and the ovule as a cell, they come together. They will allow the fusion of the nuclei of each other, and that is when the zygote is formed. That whole process we will see. Or even in case of human, we all know the male produce sperm cells, female produce egg cells or ova cells, and when they come or when they are about to fuse, it's not the cells which fuses. Obviously, cell has to fuse, but it's majorly the nuclear fusion which causes zygote formation. So that is what is called as fertilization. Now, in this case of flowering plant, specifically the pollen grains are involved, right? And the ovules are involved. So we will see their structures one by one. So first one, pollen grain. Now here there are quite a few terminologies that you will have to remember. Like, for example, the mature pollen grain in the cell is a cell with double wall. So this is the mature pollen grain shown in the diagram here. It has a double wall. The outer one is called as exine, the one which is thicker and it's kind of segmented or broken. It's not continuous around the pollen grain. That is called as exine. And the inner one is called as intine. So this inner circle that you see is nothing but the intine, and the outer thicker one is exine. Then the nucleus of this pollen grain is divided into two nucleus. One is called as tube nucleus and the other one is called as generative nucleus. Now you might wonder what are these alien terminologies here. So we will see a pollen grain develops into a pollen tube structure. So that particular nucleus is called as tube nucleus, which is assisting in the pollen tube formation. And that pollen tube carries the generative nucleus, which is generative refers to it is going to generate a new zygote, and that is what is called as generative nucleus. So one nuclear structure from the pollen grain is divided into tube nucleus and the generative nucleus separately. And at this stage, the pollen is transferred to stigma. Now, at this stage, that means this is the matured stage of the pollen grain, and that is why at this stage the pollen grain will be they will get transferred to the stigma. And subsequent changes in the pollen grain occurs only if it has fallen onto the stigma of a plant of the same species. So for further changes or subsequent changes refers to the pollen tube formation and the fusion of the nuclei or the fertilization process itself will happen only if the pollen grain they have fallen onto the stigma of the same species plant. So that is the structure of the pollen grain. In brief, what you need to remember here is there are two walls or two layers outside pollen grain, which is a single cell. Outer one is called as exine, inner one is called as intine, and its nucleus is divided into two, which is called as tube nucleus and the generative nucleus. So that is what is the structure of pollen grain, and ideally you should know the diagram also. So this germ pore is something from where the pollen tube can extend out. You might wonder what I am talking about in terms of pollen tube. So let's say we'll come back to this at the last part. So you can see there is this pollen grain, and then it has this outgrowth. Yeah, that is nothing but the pollen tube, and this is pollen tube is coming from the pollen grain, and it comes out from the germ pore area, right? So this tubular structure will come out from this germ pore wherever there is opening to the exine layer. So that is the exine, intine, germ pore, tube nucleus, and the generative nucleus. This diagram has labeled it wrongly. It's not generative cell, it is generative nucleus. There cannot be a cell inside the cell. So this is generative nucleus and not the cell. Yeah, just make a note of this. Otherwise, rest everything is fine. Okay, any question here? Anyone? I hope you people are understanding this part. Okay, so I assume things are clear to you all. Now this,
Yeah, sir.
yes, Yajnesh. Okay, I guess.
So I told, yeah, I got it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the next gamete, that is the female gamete, is the ovule. Now we'll look at the structure of the ovule. The major difference between the pollen grain and the ovule, or the male gamete and the female gamete in the flowering plant, is pollen grain is single cell, while the ovule is multiple cell or multicellular, right? How we will see that? So ovule is the inner part of the ovary. Again, one of the major misconception with most of the student is how the things are separate in the plants. Like what is ovary, what is ovule, what is placenta, what is gynoecium, what is pistil, what is carpel, or what is female gamete. All of these terminologies, they can lead to a confusion. So you make it very clear in your head all these things. Ovule is present within the ovary, right? And this ovary is the bigger part within the flower, and bigger part in the sense comparatively bigger part compared to ovule, and ovules are inside that ovary, right? And these ovules, they are destined to be seeds, and ovary is destined to be a fruit and containing seed inside it. So there can be different types of fruit. That means a single ovule producing a single seeded fruit. Any example of this which contains a single seed? Anyone?
Avocado.
Sorry?
Avocado.
Avocado, yes. Prakriti?
Mango maybe.
Yeah, mango is very easy one. Yashnesh?
So I was going to say mango, but then I haven't eaten this fruit, but I've just seen it. It's called apricot.
Yeah, but apricot doesn't have one seed inside as far as I know. It has
Oh.
4 seeds in it. I'm not too sure, but like I think it has more than one. Yes, Ruchira.
Cherry.
Sir, in jackfruits, like there are many seeds, but then there are many fruits also, right?
I guess jackfruit is one fruit having many seeds.
No, but sir, you peel those things out, no, sir. Then it'll just become like a small this thing.
No, but I don't think these are individual fruits. I mean, they are
Yeah, they're not individual fruit.
fruits.
Oh, okay.
So cherry.
Cherry, yes, that has that red cherry, right? You are talking about. Otherwise,
Yeah.
cherries are of different.
Lychee also. Lychee.
Yeah, lychee also.
So jamun.
Sorry, Namit.
Jamun.
Yeah. So all of these are single ovule producing a single seeded fruit. An example of many ovule with many seeded fruit. What is the example? There are many present in a single fruit. Someone said it just now. Here.
No, sir, I said papaya.
Yeah, papaya, guava,
Apple.
apple,
Watermelon.
Watermelon, yeah.
yeah, watermelon, all of these, oranges.
Kiwi.
Yeah. So these are all, they will have one fruit, but many seeds present within it. Strawberries for that matter. Strawberries, usually we assume strawberry as one fruit. Obviously it is one fruit, but then it has many seeds. You might have observed those small hump-like structure on the strawberry. These are individual seeds within that fruit. So that way, it is many ovules in a fruit. Yes, Yajnesh?
So, sir, in peas or beans, the inside peas is the seed, like the beans inside are the seeds, right?
No. So the pod is the fruit, right?
Yeah.
The grains inside those pods, these are the seeds.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so I hope this part is clear. What is ovule and what is ovary, which we'll come back to this later also, in the sense that what part is becoming what when the fruit has formed. So we'll see that at the end. Now, each of the ovule has one or two protective coverings. So now we are coming to the structural aspect of the ovule. We had looked at the pollen grain structure here. Now we will look at the ovule structure as well. So ovule has one or two protective covering, depends on what type of ovule, what type of flower it is, what type of fruit that plant is going to form. All of these, depending on that, it can have either one or two protective coverings, and these coverings they are called as integuments. Now again, a new terminology, I suppose, for you people. So that is nothing but just the covering. So this is the diagram of the ovule, and these two pipe-like structure that you see around, or the cover-like structure on both sides. Here also you can see these are called as integuments. Okay, and the integuments, they leave a small opening at one of the point. They have a small opening which is called as micropyle at one end, and this is specifically for the entry of pollen tube. We had seen what pollen tube is, which is coming out of the pollen grain, and then it has to enter through the micropyle, which is the opening in between the integument. So you can see this is the opening with the integument, that is called as micropyle. And this is, we will see what happens to this, because this is very much visible in the fruit. We will see all those points, so this will become more clear there. But as of now, you remember integuments, they are coverings, and a small opening between integuments is called as micropyle, through which the pollen tube will enter inside for the fusion or for the fertilization process. Enclosed by the integument is the nucellus. Do not get confused here calling it a nucleus. It is not nucleus, but it is very clearly written nucellus. Yeah, this is nothing but a mass of the food cells or food laden cells. That means this is the nutritious part of the ovule, right? So enclosed in within the integuments is the nucellus, which is the mass of the food, and further inside the nucellus is the embryo sac. Now, what we had seen so far is this integument on the outer side, the micropyle, which is the opening between the integuments. This inner portion, you can see nucellus, this round or kind of irregular shapes inside. These are all nucellus, and within that nucellus is your embryo sac. This whole oval shape is called as embryo sac. Now this embryo sac is specifically consists of 7 cells. 1 minute. Yeah, so these 7 cells, they are present like 3 plus 3 plus 1. These 7 cells, they are present within the embryo sac. 3 cells at the micropylar end are present. So these 3 cells on the lower side, you can see this is 1, this is 2, and this is the third cell. Out of this, there will be 1 egg cell. So the center one, not the center of the embryo sac, but out of these 3, this one on the sitting on the top is called as egg cell, which is going to fuse with the generative nucleus from the pollen grain. So there is this egg cell, and the other 2, they are called as synergid cells. So 1 egg cell and 2 synergid cells, they are present at the micropylar end. That means towards the micropyle side. Then there are 3 cells which are opposite to micropyle. That is opposite to micropyle is this end of the embryo sac, which is called as antipodal cells. Again, these are 3 in number. So they are antipodal cells. Again, synergid cells, 1, 2, and then there is what we call as egg cell, and there are these antipodal cells on the other end. So that's how these 6 cells, and then 1 large central cell. So this 1 large central cell, and the central cell contains 2 polar nuclei, usually 1 cell, 1 nucleus. That is how the equation is. But in this case, there are 2 polar nuclei which are present within this central cell. So that is how 3 on the top, that is on the opposite to micropyle end, 3 towards the micropyle end, so 6, and plus 1 central cell, and that is what is present within the embryo sac. Any question here? I will explain the functions of each of this part being shown in the diagram, but so far out of this, whatever has been taught, are there any questions?
So, sir, in the seed, there is one part which will become a future seed and one part which will become a future fruit.
Not really. So ovary of the flower will become the fruit, and the ovule within that ovary will become the seeds.
Oh,
Yeah, and what you are seeing here is the ovule structure which is present within the ovary, and this can be very tiny. They are usually, like, I would assume maybe less than a millimeter, means of course less than a millimeter, but approximately, if I am correct, they can be somewhere around 100 micrometer or so, which is like very tiny. But the seeds, they are relatively bigger. They are usually like 0.5 centimeter or so. Like, depends on which fruit are we talking about. But yeah, the smallest seed are, they are like very tiny. Okay, so now let me tell you some other labels which are present in here. So before that, I will revise it first. Integuments, these are the protective covering. That means they are going to protect the whole of the embryo sac structure. Micropyle is the opening between the integuments through which the pollen tube will enter. Then the nucellus, this is the nutritious tissue when the pollen, when this embryo sac needs lot of nutrition during the fertilization, because like after the, during the pollination, this may or may not be able to synthesize their own food. So that is why they store the food in the form of nucellus, and then that is being utilized by the embryo sac during the fertilization process. Also, after the fertilization, there is rapid division of cells, right? You might remember that apical meristem and so on. They always need quite a lot of energy. So something similar happens here also. There is a rapid mitotic division after the zygote formation, and that will give rise to, or that will need lot of nutrition, and that is what is being like obtained from the nucellus structure, which is present within the integuments. Then there is embryo sac, which has 7 cells. On the lower end, that is the micropylar end, there are 2 synergid cell, 1 egg cell, 1 central cell at the center, and the 3 antipodal cells. So that's what is embryo sac. Now, if you see chalaza, this is the opposite to micropyle always. That particular end is called as chalazae end, or the chalaza of the ovule. It's simply like whenever we are in a room, we always have, right, left corners. This is something like that. So there is this micropyle, and opposite to micropyle is always the chalazae end, from which the integuments they arise. So if you can see these integuments, they have look like it arises from this chalazae end. That is the outermost covering. They have arise from the chalazae side. Then there is raphe, which is the holding structure along with the funiculus, or it is also called as funicle, and that way it helps in the attachment. So if you remember that placentation, and I had mentioned the placenta is the structure which holds the ovule within the whole ovary, and that is what is placenta, and that placenta has this raphe like structure. So that is raphe, funiculus, which is the extension of the ovule for holding into the ovary structure, and hilum is nothing but the joint between the funicle and the ovule. So for example, even my palm, if the whole of the palm is the ovule, and this is the placenta or the funicle which is attached to the ovary, this junction is called as hilum. So that way, these are the different structures in the ovule. Again, any question here? I did not mention the function of antipodal cell. So the function of antipodal cell is to fetch the nutrition from nucellus whenever the fusion happens, or whenever the embryo sac is in need of nutrition. This antipodal cell, they will take out the nutrition from the nucellus, and they will pass it on to either the central cell or to the egg cell or to the zygote, depending on if the fusion has happened or not. So that way, that is the function of antipodal cell. Egg cell function is obviously common. It is going to fuse with the nuclei from the male gamete. The central nuclei or the central cell, it consists of 2 polar nuclei, and they are going to fuse with the another of the male gamete, and they will give rise to the endosperm. Endosperm is nothing but the fleshy part within the fruit. That is what is endosperm. And this function of synergid cell is just to support the egg cell, and they will break, one of them will break when the pollen tube will enter the ovule structure. So that is the whole of the ovule. And one additional fact, this type of ovule, which is kind of upside down, that is called as anatropous ovule. Anatropous means upside. So there are various types of ovule. Actually, I will just quickly show you types of ovule. And there are orthotropous, anatropous, and so on. These ones. Yeah, I hope you are able to see this. Let me find a better diagram. Yeah, this should be good enough. Open image in new tab. So if you see here, what you are looking at this type of ovule. Depending on how the micropyle is, where the funicle is, where the hilum is, and so on, these are different types. But what you saw in the diagram is the type of anatropous ovule. That means it is upside down. This is actually the opening which has to be on the top, which is orthotropous. But when this is moved upside down, that becomes anatropous. When it is on the side, it becomes hemianatropous, and so on. We need not go into these details, but I just wanted to show you what is this type of ovule that we just saw. So okay, so that is the anatropous ovule. Okay, this will take a little while to explain. So I guess we can stop here for now. And in the next class, we will start with the germination of the pollen grain and the fertilization at the end. And there are hardly four slides, I guess. And then we will be done with this chapter. So next week, not next week, next class, we should be done with this whole chapter. Are there any questions?